In this video, I'm bringing you 5 tips for how to write a fantastic short story. So let's dive in. Tip number 1 is structure. A short story is structured the same way a novel or a novella would be structured. You need to have a very clear beginning, middle, and end. That being said, your beginning needs to really be strong. You need to come out with what's called a hook. A hook is a 1 sentence or 2 sentences that really grabs your reader and compels them forward. I just got a fantastic example of a hook would be from Paolini's new To Sleep in a Sea of Stars. I don't know if you can see that clearly on the camera. But on the back right here, it says, "Space holds countless secrets. She just found the deadliest one." That is a hook. If I have ever read a hook, I'm sold. I want the book. I bought it. Have to have it. Need it. Have to read it, right? So a hook is, you have to understand your audience, you have to understand what they want, and you have to give it to them very, very quickly in 1 sentence. Now, that doesn't mean you give spoilers. It just means you get them excited very quickly. So the beginning has to have a punch like that sends the reader on the journey immediately from that point on. Now, tip number 3, I'm going to have to explain a little bit to you. And tip number 3 is to be picky. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean to be picky about everything. Your characters need to be strong, but you need to limit how many you have. Picky. Choose only the most important characters for this story. And you really don't want to go above 4 characters for a short story. You really don't. The perfect range would be 2 to 3 characters. If you have a longer short story, you might be able to get away with more characters than you would in a shorter short story. You also need to be picky about your setting. In a novel, there's a lot more time to explore world building and things like that. Whereas in a short story, you get to it really, really quickly. So again, I'm going to use Paolini's book as a prime example of this. A lot of science fiction and fantasy writers think they have to do a ton of world building because you're out in space. You have to let the person know where you are, but you don't need to do it for 3 pages or 3 paragraphs or 3 chapters. I don't know how wordy you are, but you don't need to do it for so long. Paolini actually does it in, I believe, 3 sentences. I'm going to find out. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So Paolini actually does this in 4 sentences. Very, very quickly, you know exactly where you are. The setting starts on a moon, way away from where we are. He drops you in the middle of it very, very quickly. So you don't need to spend a lot of words to world build. You just need to be very particular about the words that you choose. Now, this feeds me into tip number 4, which has to do with your prose. There's something called purple prose. You don't want to write purple prose. Purple prose are when the wording gets to be flowery or too much. Now, I am a poet. I love pretty words, and I love to string them in long sentences. But that's not what this is even talking about. This is talking about language that is beyond the story, that is arrogant in its own right. It's language that says, "Look at me, I'm the author. I did a fantastic job." Don't write like that. It annoys people. They're going to stop reading. So when an editor or another writer tells you to do what's called tightening your prose, what that means is to take a look at your sentences. You need to ask yourself if your language is flowery, if it's over the top. Are you using big words just to use big words, or are you being precise? Now, when you write a short story or a flash fiction, it really highlights those sections where you could be more economic in how you're saying something. So if you use 6 words in a sentence and it's not exactly precise, how can you whittle that down to be a 4-word sentence instead. And so yes, being more precise, but that doesn't mean to be more Ivy League either. You need to use precise language that is still common language. Going too far on the academic scale and using too many smaller words that could really be said in one more complex word are two extremes of purple prose. So it really comes back to what I said about being picky. Only here I'm saying to be picky with the words that you choose and how you structure them. Now tip number 5 is going to be something you've heard before, and that is write without fear and edit without mercy. Write your story. Put all the emotion into it. Tell your story the way that it needs to be told, and then fix it. So if you have a problem with your prose, ignore it until you're done. If you think that maybe you have too many characters, keep writing. If you've included dialogue but you're not sure you should because it's making the story too long, ignore it. Write your story exactly the way you feel it needs to be told, and then come back and edit. And honestly, it's much easier to edit a short story because there's a lot less words, there's a lot less setting, there's a lot less character, there's a lot less to make mistakes on, but there's also a lot less to edit. So it makes it much easier when you go through the editing process. So I hope you found value. Please support this channel by clicking like and subscribing. And if you hang out with me, I'm going to bring you the best content that I can personally provide or I can find anywhere on YouTube to help you write a bestseller. Welcome to my channel.